Let's talk Giants. Got a lot to talk about. I wasn't around last week. So this week we're going to be catching up on all the news from the past 2 weeks. We'll be talking about the Logan Ryan signing, how that affects the secondary. We'll also the trade for former Broncos cornerback Isaac Yiadom. DeAndre Baker's release. Pro Football Focus has predicted the breakout player for the Giants this season and our most impressive rookie from camp. There were some surprise cuts as we had to get down to 53 dudes on the roster. Ryan Connelly and Corey Coleman. Dunzo. We'll look at how Daniel Jones compares to Patrick Mahomes. What? The first official depth chart has been released. I'll break that down, and then we'll give a quick preview of week 1 against the Steelers. So first, let's talk about the Logan Ryan signing. 1 year, $7.5 million. 1 year for a base of $5 million. Includes a $3.5 million signing bonus and $2.5 in incentives. 1.5 mil of which is readily achievable. Ryan was rated number 60 on the NFL's top 100 this offseason, and no other Giants defensive player was rated in the top 100. You know, with McKinney going down with a fractured foot, with Ryan wanting to play this year and not getting any takers at his previous asking price, which I think was $9 to $10 million, we kind of scoffed and laughed at the idea that Ryan was pitching himself as a safety, or at least his agent was, sending out a memo to all the teams and comparing him to all the starting safeties. And we're like, yeah, but he's not a safety, he's a corner. And so he's putting up those kind of numbers as a corner. Can he put up those numbers as safety? Doubt it. But with McKinney going down till probably November, maybe December, and with Ryan dropping his asking price and looking like the cap hit's going to be closer to $6 million, pulled the trigger and signed him. And I like it. I've been pushing for us to sign Logan Ryan and to bring in a veteran presence who has had success in Tennessee and then New England. And it's only beneficial to the team. And, you know, it didn't really do that much damage. We didn't take a huge cap hit. So I'm all for it. A former Rutgers guy, always like to see that. So he's coming back home, and he has some experience with Joe Judge. Joe Judge is familiar with him. And we'll get to the depth chart in a little bit. I'm a little thrown off by the depth chart. I'm not sure how to read it. And again, this might be one of those vintage smoke screens, that Belichickian smoke screen, but we'll get to it in a little bit. We also bolstered our secondary further by trading for Isaac Yiadom, who will be wearing number 27. That should be a telltale sign for you, what we're going to talk about next. But before we get to DeAndre Baker, the trade is for our 2021 7th round pick. Yiadom became a starter last season, started 8 games, played in all 16, but started 8, but he was, I guess, eventually replaced. He was originally a 3rd round pick from the Broncos in 2018, played in 13 games his rookie season, only started 1. And word is he struggled, but he struggled because of the system he was within. So, and I think Vic Fangio has noted as much when talking about Yiadom after the trade, saying, like, I guess their defense is more of a zone scheme and Yiadom is more of a man coverage press kind of guy, which, love the sound of that. I've been advocating for that for a while, and we didn't really do that with Baker. So got some much needed depth, got some much needed veteran presence, which is what we've been begging for and asking for. And with Yiadom getting number 27, we saw the writing on the wall, and a lot of people called it out, and the Giants made it official. They released DeAndre Baker. What did John Mara have to say about all this? Quote, the DeAndre thing was a shock. There was no indication coming out of college. I listened very closely in those draft meetings when they talk about players and their backgrounds and whatnot, and particularly when you're talking about a first-round player. There was no indication that we should be concerned about any criminal activity. That was a big disappointment. He goes on to say the DeAndre Baker thing, which it's funny. He said the DeAndre Baker thing. The DeAndre Baker thing was just something we did not see coming. I read some stories saying there were red flags about him, but not in the sense that you would be concerned about criminal conduct at all. Obviously, it's something that's embarrassing to the organization. It's just something that we're going to have to deal with. It happens from time to time. Fortunately, 99.9% of our players are good citizens. This one was one that just we didn't see coming. It's something we're going to have to deal with. So someone put out a poll on Twitter asking, like, who's the bigger bust, Eric Flowers or DeAndre Baker? And it was pretty split, but I think it was more like leaning towards Eric Flowers being the bigger bust, which I disagree with. I think, we didn't trade up to get Eric Flowers. We didn't trade 2 of our picks to jump back into the first. Eric Flowers gave us 1, 2, 3, 4-ish seasons. Baker couldn't even give us Like he gave us one season, sort of. Didn't even really start all 16 games that first season. So I feel like that could be the biggest blemish on Gettleman's record so far. To the one and done when you give up so much for him, not great. But in terms of Isaac Yiadom, here are some opponent stats against him in 2018. Opposing quarterbacks were 20 of 34 for 258 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. And then the numbers don't get better in 2019. Quarterbacks were 38 of 54 for a 70.4% completion rate for 490 yards. No touchdowns, though, but no picks. So we'll get to the depth chart. But I don't hate it, You gave up a 7th-round pick. You gave up a 7th-round pick for was a 3rd-round pick. And who knows, in Patrick Graham's scheme, a lot of people seem to think that, obviously the coaching staff and the organization thinks that he'll be a better fit under Patrick Graham's scheme. And I have a tendency to agree. So that's a pretty huge pickup. So, the secondary, and there was also a tweet about like comparing this year's secondary with last year's secondary. You as a fan, you have to feel better about this year's secondary versus last year's. You just have to. You just look across the board and we got better. How much better is really the big question. Do we get significantly better or just get a little bitty better? But the big news, the 2 major cuts that were really surprising to me, Ryan Connelly and Corey Coleman. The Ryan Connelly cut, I flat out don't get. And, Judge never really gave us a straightforward answer. When asked about it, he was just like, we wish him the best of luck. Just wasn't a fit. Best of luck wasn't a fit. Best of luck wasn't a fit. Okay. And then but yet you were crossing your fingers and hoping that he would get through waivers so that you could sign him again to the practice squad. It's like, what? You honestly thought that dude was going to you thought he was going to make it through waivers? Dude was a starter last year and was our best linebacker. I know it's not saying a lot, but my only thought process here is that, okay, he did tear his ACL. The major knock on him before tearing the ACL was that he was slow, and that with the ACL tear, you come back, you're not going to get back to where you were in terms of speed. So he's a slow player, gets even slower. That said, I think he did pretty well in coverage. I think he got to the ball and attacked, and he made some plays in the run game. So I don't know. We didn't hear anything from anyone in the media, beat reporters, training camp, scrimmages. We didn't see anything about Ryan Connelly not performing well. To me, it feels like this is not an instance of, but it's also bananas that we kept so many goddamn linebackers. We kept like 11, 12 linebackers. And you'll see when we get to the depth chart. Lots and lots of linebackers. So how do you cut Connelly? 5th-round pick who's proven himself at the highest level versus you're keeping all these like Carter Coughlin, Cam Brown, Tay Crowder, TJ Brunson. You're keeping 4 or 5 guys on the squad, on the final roster, that you haven't seen them play a single NFL game, but they must have shown you something above and beyond what Ryan Connelly was giving you in practice. I think it caught a lot of people off guard. And there are a lot of fans that saying we'll regret it. And I'm thinking to myself, it is a surprising cut. It sucks to lose him. Big time sucks to lose him because we finally had a linebacker that we thought was a little bit of a difference maker, a playmaker. So it definitely sucks, but regret it? I don't think so. I do still trust Joe Judge. I think it was a mistake. Obviously, the Vikings swoop in and claim him off waivers like the instant he was available. So he's got a new home. We'll see how he plays. Will he be an all-pro Hall of Famer? Probably not. But I could see him making a Pro Bowl, maybe 2 down the line. But yeah, that one hurt. I had him projected as a starter next to Martinez, above Mayo. Before Mayo got hurt, I had Connelly as the starting linebacker, and I couldn't have been more wrong. Contributing to his cut was probably the fact that if we are to believe what the reporters were reporting, that Devontae Downs and the other linebackers were playing that much better than we expected. Devontae Downs, I don't think anyone projected him to be like on the roster, much less in the starting lineup after the draft video that I put out. So this is a lot of linebackers. I doubt all of them make the team, but they all did. They must have shown something or enough. It's like, do you want one guy who's strong in this area versus 4 guys? Each of them have their own strength that match up well with a certain scenario that you encounter. I talked about it before. Like, okay, we'll use on passing downs, we'll use Crowder because he's a coverage guy. On running downs, it's Brunson. On downs gives you this. On this, in this type of down and distance. I completely disagree with it. If you don't think Connelly's your starter, you don't cut him. It's not like, he's in his second fucking year. It's not like he comes with a huge bloated contract. As a fifth rounder, I don't think he's signing a massive contract. So it wasn't a contract. It couldn't have been a contract thing. He's not over the hill. He's in his second year. All signs pointed that he was fully recovered from the ACL thing. So something else is going on here. And I think maybe because was he a Shermer guy or, Connelly was a Betcher preference. Betcher really liked him. And so that's why he was drafted. And he's not really a Judge. Maybe we're overthinking this. And it really is Joe Judge thinks this guy does not fit within our scheme. Good player, doesn't fit. Maybe he is just telling the truth. But to think that he was going to get through waivers and we were going to sign him to the practice squad is bananas. Why not just sign him to the practice squad? The fuck was that about? And then Corey Coleman was the other cut. Not as disappointed with this as it was with Connelly. Coleman also had an ACL tear, probably lost a step, was not as explosive or as fast, but still, dude was projected to be the number 4 receiver. Was supposed to be our deep threat. Was supposed to be a kick returner or punt returner, and all that's out the window. It sucks. I really wanted Coleman to excel with the Giants because you saw everything he went through. It was such a redemption story, comeback player of the year type material. Cut from the Browns, picked up by the Bills and released, picked up by the Pats and released, picked up by the Giants. And I thought, okay, I guess third time's a charm, something like that. This is your time to shine. And fuck, you wonder what would have happened if he didn't tear his ACL last year, what kind of numbers he would have put up and how he would have helped out. So that's kind of a blow. The dude that they got, it's kind of like he was on the roster and then all the other cuts were made and players were placed on waivers and the Giants made their signings on waivers. And so they had to make cuts. And so the guy that they got is supposedly, and I guess in the Giants' eyes, is a better deep threat than Corey Coleman. I think his name is Damon Ratley. Yeah, Damon Ratley. Very interesting. I don't think he got a ton of playing time, but in the playing time he did, he fared fairly well. So I wish them the best, man. I think that sucks. We also placed David Sills on IR with a broken foot. That sucks because he seemed like he was going to be a big target and really help us out in the red zone at least. So that kind of leaves a hole there. It was in a span of 20. It's so odd to me that for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, almost months, you had a sense of what our team is going to look like. And in a span of 24 to 48 hours, it almost not got completely flipped on its head. I'm not going to say that, but holy shit, some pretty significant updates to the roster and to the depth chart. But that stinks about David Sills. Heard a lot of good things about him coming out of camp. Looked like he was probably going to be in the mix of wide receiver. And now we have a dude named Damon Ratley, which I know next to nothing about. Judge has a vision. He's on Twitter now too, which is crazy. He has a vision and he's sticking to it. And he seems pretty decisive. He knows what he wants. He discusses with his coaching staff and he trusts their judgment. So you got to trust him. It's crazy how he's earned my trust. He's earned my trust. I haven't seen one game from him yet. But yet Shermer, it's just doesn't inspire confidence, but Judge does. So Pro Football Focus predicted every NFL team's 2020 breakout player, and ours is Julian Love. Love is as versatile a secondary player as they come. He didn't see substantial action as a rookie in 2019 till week 12, which is still what are you doing? But he played well, logging over 75 snaps in the box, in the slot, and at deep safety. Produced a 70.5 grade in that span, ranking 26 among qualifying safeties. He's likely to stick at safety to start with, but he might also be slotted in at cornerback. He was one of the best cornerbacks at Notre Dame. 4th highest graded corner in the FBS on the outside, tied for 8th in forced incompletions. Size is concerning, not exactly blazing speed, but incredibly smooth athlete with ball skills. Should have a decent year too. Spoiler alert, he's listed as the starting free safety on the depth chart. PFF also had put out a list of the most impressive rookie camp performances, and fellow corner Darnay Holmes made the list. Holmes is probably the most productive player in the entire defensive backfield during training camp, according to Giants.com's John Schmilk, but he's a top slot corner option, ranked 86th on PFF's draft board. 78.7 coverage grade showed what he's truly capable of during his sophomore year. If those two, with Yiadom and Ryan and Baker out of the picture, don't get you a little more excited or at least a little more content with our secondary, I don't know what to tell you. I feel good about our secondary. I mean, I feel better about our secondary than I did last year. It's just a question of, and maybe this is intentional by the coaching staff, but once we get to the depth chart and you see what they're doing there, but it seems like it's very much, you have options. Much like the Mets have a lot of options with their infield, the Giants have a lot of options in the secondary. So I saw this kind of late in the day yesterday. Damon Harrison on leaving the Giants. It's one of the biggest regrets in my life. Oh, it was one of the 3 biggest regrets in his life. So Snacks hated how things ended with the Giants. Okay, so he was talking about how it's one of the biggest regrets, and it's not due to Mara or Gettleman or, front office ownership, anything like that. It had to do with he didn't mention names, but he said they're no longer with the team, which would indicate Pat Shurmur, James Betcher, and defensive line coach Gary Emanuel. So those 3 dickheads made Snacks want to pack up and hit the road. So thanks for that. Because could you imagine if we still had Damon Harrison? And I know he's not performing quite at the same level, but he's still one of the, I'd say, top tier interior defensive linemen. Do we trade for Leonard Williams? Probably not, because then you have Harrison, Tomlinson, Hill, Lawrence. So you've now got back 2 of those draft picks they had to give up for Leonard Williams. You probably didn't have to place this ridiculous franchise tag on Leonard Williams, $16 million, I think it is. Now you're not stuck in a position if you're Gettleman where you have to try and finagle some kind of wild, crazy deal to keep him around to justify that trade. Man, how the dominoes fall. It is it is interesting to watch, and also very frustrating. Don't get me wrong. How things were handled really from 2015 on. Should the Giants, let's play Captain Hindsight for a little bit. Now that we have 20/20 vision on the past, let's play a little, even though you should really have a growth mindset and focus on the present and be more mindful in the present. That's what I've been told. I like looking at the past and opening up old wounds. That's what I do. And right now we're going to look at 2015 on. Say we don't fire Coughlin. He sticks around. Maybe we lose McAdoo. That kind of stinks. Given the kind of offensive output that we had in 2014, 2015, potential of firepower that we had under McAdoo's watch. Yeah, it hurts to lose McAdoo, but knowing what we know now, and who knows if McAdoo had more trust placed in his thought process, maybe we'd have Patrick Mahomes now. There's a lot of strands you can go on, a lot of threads that you can go on about how the Giants could have done better and would have done better had they just let some things happen. One thing is you keep Coughlin, but then you still spend out the ass for all those free agents, Jackrabbit, OV, and Snacks. With Coughlin at the helm, do they lose in the playoffs that first round, or do they go on a run and possibly make the Super Bowl? Probably. Maybe. So if Coughlin sticks around and McAdoo leaves, that means that, and we make a deep run in the 2016 playoffs, say the 2017 shit still happens and all of our receivers are murdered on the field as they were. McAdoo, I don't think, knew how to handle the situation or probably didn't respond to it the right way. Would Coughlin have? Probably. So then you don't have the disgruntled Eli Apple and Jackrabbit and DRC, and you don't have a lot of these guys. There's turmoil in the clubhouse. I don't know if you have that with Coughlin as head coach. 2018 comes around and you don't have to fire Ben McAdoo. But yet again, Jerry Reese is still the GM. How does that play out? You don't bring in Shurmur and Betcher and all that jazz, which means Snacks and all them probably stick around. Is Odell Beckham Jr. still a Giant? I mean, we could get into it if you want to, but really, we're still recovering from what happened after the 2015 season, in my mind. We are still 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 5 years after the goddamn fact. We're still reeling after Tom Coughlin was fired. And I was one of the people that wanted him out. I thought that he lost control of the team. He didn't have control of the team. Meanwhile, you can point fingers all you want and say who's responsible for what. But I will say this. Shit, man, if you go on that free agent spend that we did in 2016 and you give that kind of talent to Tom Coughlin, you know what I mean? Who knows what happens? But our defenses were pretty goddamn awful from 2013, 2014, 2015. 2013, they were okay in the second half. 2014, they stunk. 2015, they stunk. And then they were refortified in 2016. So imagine Tom Coughlin with a capable defense. Imagine how Eli continues to play with Tom Coughlin still acting father figure. I mean, we saw Eli cry when Coughlin resigned or retired, quote unquote. I felt it was time for him to move on because I thought he lost control. He didn't have the same kind of control, but it really came down to a talent type thing. It really did on defense, on the defensive side of the ball. And we're still reeling from it, recovering from it. I mean, you can blame Shermer and Betcher and whatnot, but they were kind of forced into a very turbulent situation, as is Joe Judge, and I think Joe Judge is handling it phenomenally. So how does Daniel Jones compare with Patrick Mahomes? Saw this tweet: the last 7 games played in 2019. So I mean, obviously we're cherry picking data here, but it's still nice to look at. Jones had 1,883 passing yards. Mahomes 1,851 passing yards. Jones had 18 touchdowns and 5 picks. Mahomes had 11 touchdowns and 4 picks. Jones 95.4 passer rating. Mahomes 97.6 passer rating. Jones 118th average draft position in the 2020 fantasy football draft season. Mahomes was 7th. So, and I think you saw that, or you heard about it as people were starting to have their fantasy football drafts leading up to week 1. It was like, don't sleep on Daniel Jones, that he can put up some pretty decent numbers. This could be a breakout year for him. I think it will be a breakout year for him. As long as as long as the offense stays healthy. You can't have 2 of your top receivers go down and then a lineman go down and expect him to put up the same kind of numbers. Let's take a look at this damn depth chart, okay? This is the depth chart week 1 against the Steelers. You can read into it as you will, as you may. I think, especially on the defensive side of the ball, it's not as concrete or set in stone as this kind of structured layout presents it to be. Offense, obviously, I think you can probably put it in the books. Like, this is what we're going to get. But so offense, we'll start with offense. Obviously, Shep at 1 wide receiver position, Golden Tate, Darius Slayton at the other 2. It looks like Damian Ratley will be the number 4. And then you have CJ Board as the number 5, which is a little scary because Ratley and Board just joined. I mean, Ratley just joined like last week and Board joined like a couple weeks ago. So it's kind of makes me a little uneasy that, with Golden Tate's hamstring being an issue now, Shepard being concussion prone, and Slayton, he missed a bunch of games beginning of the season with hamstring, that if any of them go down, we're now inserting a guy who's still very new and fresh to the playbook and to the system. So it's kind of scary. Starting 10 end, Evan Ingram, obviously, with Caden Smith backing up. And then we have Levine Toilolo and Eric Tomlinson. Although I don't know that, is Tomlinson back on? Okay, I guess he is back on. We've been told that there's going to be a lot more 2 tight end sets with Jason Garrett as OC. It's almost like Ingram is, I almost want to say that Ingram is like the 4th wide receiver. And really it's going to, if we do two tight end sets, Ingram is going to be either kind of like the wing back slot receiver. I don't think he's going to be lined up next to the tackle. He's going to be off the line of scrimmage. So I would think that you'd see a lot of like Caden Smith and Levine Toilolo with their hand down. Right tackle's Cameron Fleming with Matt Peart backing him up. Right guard Kevin Zeitler. Shane Lemieux is backing up as the backup guard on the right and left side. Nick Gates, alpha male, is our starting center. Spencer Pulley, after Jalapio decided to decline the practice squad offer, we got Pulley as the backup center. Hernandez at left guard. Andrew Thomas at left tackle. Jackson Barton is listed as the backup left tackle. I don't know anything about that dude, but I know that he was kind of a late signing. I believe it was after the initial cuts were made to the 53. Saquon starting running back, Deion Lewis and Gallman backing him up. Elijah Penny is our starting fullback. And then you have Daniel Jones as a starting quarterback and Colt McCoy as our backup, with Cooper Rush on the practice squad. RIP Alex Tenney. So the defense is where it gets a little tricky and gets super, because this depth chart, it's not as like regimented and rigid, I think, as the offense. It's very fluid. It's very non-binary. It's very gender fluid on the defensive side of the ball. It depends. There's going to be a lot of different packages, and a lot of different arrangements, setups, schemes. So I don't think you can read, you can, if you're an opposing offense, I don't think you look at this and say, okay, that's the guy we're going to line up against every down. So strong side linebacker Lorenzo Carter with Marcus Golden and Carter Coughlin backing him up. I mean, I think they're really going to use Marcus Golden as strictly a pass rusher. Same goes with Carter Coughlin. I think those will be, on definitive pass situations, third, long, bring in Golden Coughlin and just pin their ears back and let them have at it. Defensive end Dexter Lawrence II with RJ McIntosh backing him up. And middle linebacker, you have Blake Martinez, or Captain Blake Martinez with Tay Crowder behind him. At nose tackle, you have Dalvin Tomlinson with Austin Johnson, who we signed from the Titans in the offseason, backing him up. At the will linebacker, you have Devontae Downs, which, boy, that came out of nowhere. Very interesting to see him as a starter. I don't think a lot of people had that. I mean, there was, like I said, there was a lot of talk about him opening some eyes in camp, but they say that about a lot of players, and they don't end up being our starter. And then TJ Brunson will back him up. At the other D tackle spot, you have Leonard Williams with BJ Hill being the backup. O'Shane Zimenez is on the weak outside linebacker position starter. Fackrell will back him up with Cam Brown backing him up. So, I mean, you can see how many friggin' linebackers we're carrying. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yowza. It's a lot of linebackers. The thought process is Fackrell's a free agent. This is a kind of a make or break year for Carter. Golden is a kind of a 1 year, one and done free agent. Let's see what we can get out of him in terms of the pass rush. And Cam Brown and Carter Coughlin are your developmental guys, along with Crowder and Brunson. Interesting. I thought that Coughlin and Brown would be kind of on the cusp, on the bubble. And I thought that we would have to choose between the two. Instead, we kept both. So Judge comes from a special teams background. So if he sees that you have potential on special teams, he's going to keep you on the 53. But you can see already, like, we're keeping a lot more guys on defense than we are offense. So left corner, James Bradbury, obviously. Backing him up is Darnay Holmes and Brandon Williams. Strong safeties, Jabril Peppers with Nate Ebner, special teams captain. Well, they're both special teams captains, which is interesting. Jabril Peppers and Nate Ebner. Free safety starters, Julian Love, as I mentioned. Backing him up is Logan Ryan and then Adrian Colbert, who we picked up with Damian Ratley after the initial 53-man cut downs were made. And then our starting right cornerback, Corey Valentine, when backing him up is Isaac Yiadom. I mean, I feel pretty good about our defense. I feel pretty good. I'm interested to see what Devontae Downs can do if all the hype that he got. And this is where I would, even though preseason can be a mixed bag and it's mostly boring, but sometimes there's a standout player. I would have loved to see Devontae Downs in action in the preseason. And Valentine, I mean, I think that's a case of Isaac Yiadom is so new to just the organization, to the system, that they probably want to give him a couple weeks and they feel like Valentine won't be as detrimental to us as possible. But I would have to think that they're going to target Valentine. You're looking at probably Holmes is the starting slot corner, or is it Logan Ryan? And those are the three that I'm most interested in the secondary: Darnay Holmes, Julian Love, and Logan Ryan. Because it's pretty obvious that Yiadom is going to be strictly on the outside, but like, are we going to see a lot of 3 safety sets? Which I know that there was some talk about it. We've had success with it in the past. So are they going to bring that back where maybe Ryan's back, Love is up, maybe Peppers is up, Ryan and Love are back? I like that dynamic, the ability to mix it up and give different looks and confuse offenses. So just would have loved for Connelly to be a part of that. And then special teams, you have the long snapper, Casey Kreider, Riley Dixon, who as much as the scrimmages suck to watch, it was still kind of cool seeing them experiment a little bit. So like on one punt, Riley Dixon took it and fired a beautiful pass to the gunner for a first down. I like how they did not exclude that from the director's cut of this freaking weirdly filmed scrimmage where there's like all these weird angles and condensed and we don't see everything and it's half speed. But if that's that, I just like putting that in the mind of the opposing special teams coach. Like, we have that potential, so be on the lookout. We'll at least cut down on block punts, hopefully. Golden Tate is listed as our starting punt returner with Jabril Peppers and Sterling Shepard and Slayton as the backups there. Darnay Holmes and Darius Slayton will be our kickoff returners, with Valentine, CJ Board, and Dion Lewis also being in the mix. And Greg Minot is our starting kicker. So there you have it. There's our depth chart. So how do we match up against these Pittsburgh Steelers? I guess it's a little bit of a hot take. I think Big Ben is going to suck this year. I think Ben Roethlisberger is going to stink out loud to the point where he's going to be benched, a la what happened to Eli in 2019 last year. Not to say that that was Eli's fault, but you could tell the offense does not operate at the same level with Eli as they do with Daniel Jones. And I think that's going to happen with the Big Ben. I just don't. I think he's past his prime. I think he's seen his best years are behind him. And all this talk about how, Juju is so happy Big Ben's back and everyone's so happy he's back and they're really excited by what he brings and blah, blah, blah. Nope. Disagree. I have nothing to lean on. No evidence, no facts, no data, nothing. Didn't see him play a single snap this offseason, training camp, whatever. I just got a hunch. It's intuition, my folks, my friends. I think he is going to have a shit year. And I think you're going to see that Monday night. I think he's going to have an awful game. And we're going to open some eyes, come away with a win. We're going to steal a win, you guys. We're going to steal a win from the Steelers. That's what I think. It's not going to be easy. Okay, so the defense is probably going to have a fair amount of success and luck against Big Ben. On the flip side of the ball, I think that our offense is it's not going to look great against the Steelers defense. The Steelers have like a top 3 defense, if not the top defense in the NFL. Tremendous pass rush. I mean, all around. You got TJ Watt. You got Cameron Hayward. Just re-signed an extension. I mean, you just have it's a ferocious, tenacious defense. Tenacious D, shout out. With an offensive line that didn't get to see a ton of game action. You got a rookie starting a left tackle. You have a kind of borderline starter at the right tackle position with a newly minted center who hasn't really played that position that much. You're going to see a lot of mishaps. I mean, I'm if I had to put it over under 4 sacks, I would say over. You're looking at 5 sacks. But that said, the offense is still going to show some fight. And I think we're going to cover the spread. I think the spread is like 5.5. Steelers are favored by 5.5. I think we'll cover that. And we could steal away a victory here. I'm really confident of that. Even though the Pittsburgh defense is top notch, the Pittsburgh offense is kind of banged up. I think their starting guard, something like that, opted out or is injured. So I think the Steelers offense is not exactly where people think it is, but I do think the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is going to be fairly dominant, at least in the first half. So it'll be a low scoring affair in the first half. I believe we'll probably exchange a couple field goals, maybe see a touchdown from Pittsburgh. And then the Giants offense will come around in the second half. I think Jason Garrett will put together some interesting stuff in the second half and we'll make it competitive and close and possibly sneak away a victory. Graham Gano, last second, 63-yard field goal for the win. Holy shit. No. Maybe like a 40-yard field goal for the win. Between 40 and 50 yards. You can look at the schedule and you could say, you could get a little rattled by it. The guys did not come out firing at Thursday morning's practice, I think it was, and he made them restart. He said, we're starting over. Start it from step 1. Let's go back to position 1 and start it up. Run it again. Brought the team together, said didn't like the enthusiasm, didn't like the attitude, didn't like the energy. Was like, let's do better. What I love is that you have captains, Saquon Barkley and Blake Martinez, coming and supporting their coach and saying, we support that decision. Full hand up, honest to God, we did not come out looking our best and feeling our best. And he made us restart, and it was the right move to make. Good. It just feels good. I know that, sucks losing McKinney, sucks losing Mayo, sucks losing Connelly, sucks losing Coleman. But we have made some pretty good moves that if we can just stay healthy, we're looking at possibly a wild card. Whoa. And I'll finish off by saying this. The Giants released their uniform schedule. Not a whole lot of surprises here. They will be wearing people call them the Color Rush uniforms. They're not I don't think they are the Color Rush uniforms because they're basically our away uniform from, the 80s and 90s. Why we keep wearing the away uniforms from the 80s and 90s at home, I'll never understand. Just wear, and this is what caught me off guard, is the headline says the Giants will wear their Super Bowl 25 era classics versus the Buccaneers. And I was thinking to myself, oh my God, well, we will, like in Super Bowl 25, we wore our home blue jerseys. So we're going to wear the old school from the 1990 Giants uniforms against the Bucs at home. Like that's going to be huge. And nope, it's the damn all whites again. I mean, yes, they look great. We just don't win in them. Look at the record dating back to 2016. We just do not win in those uniforms. So would have liked to see the blues, but we're going to get the whites.